So I just bought the cheapest joiner on the internet. What the F was I thinking? Seriously, this thing was like 50 bucks. Okay, so I've bought Wen tools in the past, and my overall impression of the brand is that they make a decent tool, but it's not really a production tool. And by production, I mean something that you're going to use day in and day out. There are some plastic parts and some precision is not great, but for the occasional use tool, they're pretty good. And honestly, you can't beat the price. So in this case, I wanted a biscuit joiner, and not to do any kind of crazy joinery, but just to use these little biscuits to help align things like panel glue ups and that kind of stuff where I didn't want the board shifting on me as I was applying the clamping pressure. So I figured, what the hell, for 50 bucks, let me buy this and see how it works out. Now, the way I currently do alignments is with this Dowel Max jig, and this Dowel Max is really good for putting these dowels in and for doing certain types of joinery, and it's also probably 5 times the cost of that biscuit joiner. Now, the only issue with using this is it's a little bit of a pain in the neck to set up just for doing alignments. You have to put these different spacers in order to make it sit flush with the space that you want to put it in. And the other issue is you got to tighten these up each time, move it down, then take the drill, put the drill in, drill out the hole, and move down both pieces of wood. So it's a little slow, especially just to do an alignment. So I wanted something that was faster. And that is the reason behind me going out and buying this very cheap joiner. So here's what you get for 50 bucks. You get this plastic case, which, while not the best, is good enough to protect the tool and hold it. You get the joiner itself, a couple bags of starter biscuits, a wrench of some sort, we'll figure out what this does in a second, and a dust collection bag. Since this is YouTube and I know attention spans can sometimes be short, we'll get right to using the tool and cutting some slots in this hardwood. Now, this is cherry that I'm going to use for the top slab of a workbench I'm working on. So it isn't the hardest stuff, but it definitely is not the softest, and it cuts into it nice and easy. Now, while I was testing this out, I noticed my first challenge, and that is the alignment mechanism is on the bottom of the plate, which means that if you draw your lines to align the two boards at the top, it is difficult to get these two to match up. I did find a quick workaround, and that was to line up the top of the plate with the wood and then to slide the joiner down slowly and then make the cut. The joiner made some pretty nice slots and they were pretty clean without any burning, so I slid some biscuits in to test it out and then overly applied a lot of glue. And I'm going to say this is to test the expansion, but I really just put too much glue on. But I did learn something from this, and that was after I put the biscuits in, they started to expand. And this expansion made it kind of hard to get the next piece of wood to go down easily. But I applied a few clamps and we were able to negotiate that into place. And the boards came out pretty well aligned. Okay, now that I've gotten to use it, what do I think about the overall build quality? Well, it's pretty good. There's a couple things I do want to mention. One is this handle has a little bit of give back and forth. It moves. Though it isn't really that big of a deal because when you're plunging in, you're really just holding it to stabilize it. Really, all the pressure is going up against the wood right here while you push the blade to cut the biscuit into it. The second thing I want to mention is that all these mechanical pieces for the alignment, they all look to be made out of cast aluminum. And now there's nothing wrong with cast aluminum, but there was an issue that I will show you a little bit later that has to do with this guide. And not saying that the aluminum is the problem, but it probably helped contribute to it. So all in all, it worked good for what I was doing, but let's take a quicker look at all the components and some of the settings on this joiner. The first thing we need to set is this little dial on the side, and that goes to 0, 10, or 20 to match the type of biscuit you're using. Now the number is written on the side of the biscuit. This controls how deep the plunge goes. If you get a biscuit that doesn't quite fit in place, you can make an adjustment on the side right here using this screw to make it a little shallower or deeper. Next, you need to set how far down on the workpiece you want your biscuit to go, and you do that by sliding the fence up and down. There's this little scale to help you with that, but I couldn't figure out what it was supposed to line up to, and it can be calibrated, but even after calibration, the zero didn't really line up with anything. The calibration was also a little bit difficult. You had to first take off the fence and then loosen up these two screws, one of which was obstructed by the biscuit size dial, and then use a screwdriver to bump the gauge up or down until it lined up. But again, there was nothing really to line it up with. The next thing to take a look at is the angle adjustment. And you just loosen up the knob the same as the height adjustment, and you can see the different angle increments. Now, the angle adjustment had a gauge that was easier to see with this little arrow, which could also be adjusted using the screw, but it was just too far away from the gauge to actually see what it was indicating with any kind of precision. I alluded to this next problem in the beginning of the video, and that's the aluminum extrusion had a problem where it just wasn't square. In my brief testing, though, this didn't affect its actual operation. An unexpected highlight of this tool actually was its dust collection. As you can see here, and it's not kicking out a ton of dust, and the little bag was probably the only disappointment in the sense that it didn't hold very much, so a few biscuits filled it up pretty quickly. But if I hooked this up to a dust extraction hose, I think this would have done a pretty good job. The next thing we'll do is take a look at maintenance, and this is a brushed motor, so that over time you'll need to remove this little door on the side and then replace the brush underneath. But you'll get lots and lots of hours on this tool before this replacement needs to be done. Like any bladed tool, the blade will eventually need to be replaced. So you'll need to remove the bottom plate using these 4 screws. This is also a good time to go ahead and remove any dust that may be clogging up the dust exhaust port while you're here. Use the spanner tool that came with the unit to engage the blade, then press down on the lock button on the top of the device to hold it in place, and then you can release the blade by turning it. Now, I'm not going to do it because I don't have another blade, but it looks pretty easy. When you remove the base plate, make sure that you don't knock off any of these little retainer washers. These hold the screws in place so that they don't get lost. These are the markers for lining up the joiner with the workpiece. They're fairly easy to see, except when, as I showed earlier, they're too far away from the marks you made. Also, a little black Sharpie in here might make it easier to recognize. And finally, let's take a look at the start-stop button. There's this little trigger that you push forward, and then you push the button down. If you don't push that safety in, the trigger won't activate. So ultimately, which one did I like better? Was it this $50 Wen Biscuit Joiner or this $250 dowel max along with the drill and everything else that goes along with it? Well, the answer is both. For the application that I showed, I think I like the dowel pins. For the heavier pieces of lumber, it was a little bit easier to line these up. And these biscuits, well, once they get a little glue on them, they swell a little bit, and it makes it a little difficult to get everything stacked and lined up before they start to get a bit sticky. And if you drill just a little bit too light on these, they can start to protrude out and leave gaps. So you got to be a little bit careful when using the biscuits. Now, that's really comes down to a choice of the dowels versus the biscuits. Now, the machine itself, it handled great. It was definitely much quicker than doing all the individual drilling that I'd have to do with the dowels. So depending on the application, I'll probably use both. If I need to do something quick, down, and dirty, definitely this. So that's my 2 cents. Anyway, if you like this video and want to see more content from me, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hopefully we've earned that subscription. Toss us a like while you're down there. If you have any questions or comments on either the Wen jointer or even on the Dowel Max setup, let me know. I always try to answer every single one of the comments that people leave for me. So until next time, good luck with your projects, and we'll see you in our next video. They looked upbeat.